Mode.
Well, good morning, everyone, here from Finland. And yes, I wasn't there on Wednesday, but I will be next Wednesday. All that meditation on Pisces. Now, I don't know if that's, whoop, okay. I don't know if that's the sign of inner space or spaciness, but we had stayed up very late discussing Pisces, and the next thing you know, I knew I was getting my best sleep during the program. But I'm glad that some of you have returned. We thought we'd make a special program so that, to keep things going, because pretty soon the conference will be upon us. This is the 33rd conference, and the symbolism is not lost on me. It's an important year. There's said to be 33 vertebrae in the spinal column, and this the climax of the life of Jesus, as he was overshadowed by the Christ, was 33, and we have everything concerning the sort of third ray with the number 6 and 9 involved. So I think it's going to be very interesting because we have to put together the idea of love and intelligence. And that is the great task on our second ray, third ray planet. In certain places, we are told that the second ray is the major ray of our planet, because the personality ray is supposed to be fading out, and that is the third ray. Our monadic ray on this planet is the first ray, and it's said to be occultly inactive, because we are not yet a sacred planet. So our big job is to put together the second and the third ray. And the problem there is that those are the two rays which generically rule the soul and the personality. Every one of us has that particular task to put those together. And, it's a difficult task. So what we're doing here, we're meditating and we're studying, and the service aspect, well, it is a service to think the teaching into the consciousness of humanity. That is a service. It's an educational service. And I know many of us are involved in education or in some sort of therapy or helping, people straighten things out in their lives. So the three factors that we have to be concerned about are the meditation on the first ray, study on the second ray, and service on the third ray. So anyway, I'm glad to be back with you. And next Wednesday, it will be the evening schedule for this program and the morning schedule for all the other Ask programs. And I guess one of the points that I wanted to say is that I wanted to invite as many of you as may be possible to actually attend the conference in person. I think there's no substitute for it, and getting together with your fellow group members to whom you are probably related on the inner side in ways that are not yet clear to all of us. I think it's a real lift, and many people use it as kind of a high point of inspiration for the year, along with the Wesak Festival, of course. This year, we will not be celebrating the Wesak Festival. Is a little bit after the conference. So if you have activities at home involving Wesak, then there's no interference there. So, okay, I just want to welcome you, Anne and Antoinette and Barbara and Catherine, Chris, Deborah, Frederick, Hilda, Joe, Karen, Carrie, Mariana, Marissa, Mariut, Martha, Natia, and Yenka, and Rebecca, and Vera, and Veronica. And over here on the staff side, let's see, Joe and Michael Stacy are helping to keep things straight. All right. Now, I realize that this is about the science of triangles. And in order to really study our work here, we have to get into quite a bit of occultism. Quite a bit. I don't know. I'm hoping that many of you are serious readers of the books. And, no matter what you read from the books, you find it of value. So even though I'm venturing off into a lot of occult areas rather than just discussing triangles, 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 it all comes together when we consider what the science of triangles is. As you look at, for instance, just take a look at this map, this chart right in front of you, and look at the number of triangles that are existing in the relationships between the various masters and Kumaras and planetary logoi and cosmic logoi and the solar logos and so forth. They're just this amazing web of interplay here on a triangular basis. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even want to try to count. It would take quite a while to keep track of all the triangles that are found here. Yeah, I mean, for instance, take a look. Here's Master M, here's Master KH, here's Master DK. That's a triangle. And when it comes to Master DK and Master M and the Manu, that's another triangle, you see. And here's one with the Mahachohan and Master KH and Master DK, and so forth. There are many of them that are latent. They're not easily discerned. But what we can be sure is that as our planet progresses towards more sacredness, we might say, the triangles will take over from the squares. And beyond the triangles found in the sacred planets, we will have the interlocking circles as found in the etheric body of our solar logo. So when we're talking about stars and solar logoi, we're probably talking circles rather than triangles. And there's a progression there from the square to the triangle and to the circle. And the interplay is what we're talking about. Etheric flows, stimulations, relationships. The great science of relations is a huge science in cosmos. And basically, everything is related to everything else. Absolutely, that is the case. Whatever that relationship may be. And we can go further than that if we want to get a little mystical about it, or maybe a cult, I don't know. Everything is everything else. And that's a good one to meditate on, and finding that commonality of sameness between all apparent differences is a big goal for the advancing consciousness. All right, let's just have a little alignment here, and good to see you. Good to see you all here. I was wondering whether I might be talking to myself here, because I know we had to change that, and I did want you to be able to get your weekly dose of this particular science. So let's link up wherever we may happen to be geographically, because the space, as we usually think of it, makes no difference in our contact, really. So here we are, in principally three different continents, but not exclusively so, Europe, the Americas, and Australia, New Zealand. And we're all verging upon sharing one consciousness. And that's our purpose as we work together, to bring us together in consciousness. It's much more important than bringing us together in form, at least given the developments which are now current within humanity and given human progress up to this point. So we, as if, always the as if, stand before the ashram and sort of on the outer fringes, and seek to be enlightened by the more intense light of the ashram and that which is sent forth by Master DK, acting as actually the monadic point within the ashram. So may that light flow in, and may we be increasingly illumined about these matters. They are all very deep, and all the answers are not available to us at this time, but increasingly it will be so. And we'll just sound an om to confirm that expectation. Okay, now we were in the middle of a series of points. We had reached point number 6. It was all about the relationship of Shamballa, hierarchy, and humanity. That diagram showing the past, present, and future of the interaction of those 3 major planetary centers. And, sometimes there's a question. When we talk about Shamballa, hierarchy, and humanity, does it only apply to our globe, to our chain, or does it apply to the entire planetary scheme? And somehow, just the way the Buddhas of activity, another great triangle, are a particular emanation that works in relation to our globe, there are higher correspondences to those Buddhas which work in relation to every globe and to the chain. And then there are still higher correspondences which work in relation to the whole planetary scheme. And if you want to see a little bit about that, if I'm correct and remember properly, there's some info on page 873 of A Treatise on White Magic. And it's very interesting. Now, actually, some of this is held, for people who are truly initiates. You can read the book, they say, if you're truly an initiate. But okay, we do our best just out of our interest. And this is all about the mystery of electricity. So I'll just show you, and maybe you've run into this before, about the mystery of electricity, the positive pole, the negative pole, and some kind of neutral relation between a neutral type of electricity, which has not been fully recognized or developed yet. I'll just read this, and you see what I mean in terms of these triangles and how widely they are spread. The mystery of electricity has 3 keys. each of which is held in the hands of one of the Buddhas of activity. Theirs is the prerogative to control the electrical forces of the physical plane, and theirs the right to direct the three major streams of this type of force in connection with our present globe. Now, notice the Buddhas of activity have that particular function. We often talk of them, but they are globe related. These three streams are concerned with atomic substance, out of which all forms are constructed. In connection with our chain, and I think we know what that is, it comprises 7 globes. Maybe they are superimposed, we don't know. In connection with our chain, there are 3 mysterious entities, of whom our 3 Pratyeka Buddhas are but the earth reflections. See what I mean? There's emanation and reflection who perform a similar function in connection with the electrical forces of the chain. So here are 3 mysterious entities in connection with our chain. But it doesn't stop there, you see. In the scheme, the planetary logos has also 3 cooperating existences, who are the summation of his third aspect, who perform, therefore, work similar to that performed by the 3 aspects of Brahma in the solar system. So here are 3 different kinds of triangles, all of them involved with our planetary scheme, the planetary chains, and various planetary globes. And it gets quite interesting and quite intricate. Now, there's not too much we can really know about this, but DK does lay this out. And I would say this, if you're interested in a treatise on cosmic fire, I've done a lot of work on that, and you can find it in Makara. And the first 1,000 pages or so, a bit more, are done in a systematic written manner. After that, I just had to speed ahead, and the last 100 pages are done in a video format. And they deal oftentimes with things about which we can know very little, but they do expand the abstract mind. And there is such a difference between, when we say 3 minds unite, there's different ways to look at that, but one of the ways to look at that is the concrete mind, the son of mind within the soul, having to do with subplanes 2 and 3, and then the abstract mind. These are three minds. And I think we all would be amazed at how many people are simply thinking with the concrete mind and have not made a connection through meditation or by whatever means or service with the process that we call soul mind, nor have they made a connection with the abstract mind of the first subplane of the mental plane. So, if I was to put that into pictures, I would say on the mental plane below the dotted line, here is the concrete mind. The next 2 subplanes constitute the son of mind or soul mind, and the highest subplane constitutes the abstract mind. And therein you have another potent triangle, but one which must be united, so that, it's like driving a car and switching gears very smoothly instead of with a bump and a lurch. You have to know how to hit the clutch in the right way. So many of us, all of us, I would say, are striving to unite these 3 minds. There are also other minds that you can unite, because probably there's a 5-pointed star when it comes to mind on the cosmic physical plane. All right, well, that was just a little, I guess I can call it a deviation, just to show you another example of where triangles can be found. And, you know, I must say, and I've probably shown this to you before, and probably you're familiar with it, but, let me just see how I would do this. Yeah, this is a good one. I think probably that's all I need. Let's see here. I'm going to go on just a little bit and see if I can find some of this stuff. Yes, I think I can. But let's take a look at our planetary scheme and how absolutely filled with triangles it is. Now, DK has concealed much information about these various chains and even some of the globes in this diagram. That's his way, you know, if you notice it, good for you, and maybe you can make something out of it. And if you don't notice it, it hasn't done any harm. But this is really filled with a lot of extra information about what you can expect on the various globes of our chain and within the various chains, as some of them are not articulated because he's just not allowed to show certain things. But notice the big square, after all, this is a non-sacred planet, and there is the big square. And maybe there's going to be some of these, well, I guess no, they don't all have squares. The more sacred chains, such as the Mercury chain and the Venus chain, I believe that's it, do not have squares. They have triangles within triangles. So, you know, when DK talks about meticulous entirety, this is the kind of thing he's talking about. And when he says that things are just too, wait a second, I've got a yes, come in, please. I send it to you. It's there. Okay. Yeah. Some in my own household here, I've got to make sure the right link is going where it should go. That to detect the squares, triangles, and circles beneath all of the interrelationships, this requires a lot of meticulous attention. So DK's ashram, even though he trains a lot of people from all different kinds of places, is given to that quality that we call meticulous entirety. And you can find out more about it by going here to Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. Let's see if I can just, there's only one. Okay. And what does he say? If I can find it. Inclusive reason. This is the theme for the initiatory meditation of the second-ray disciple and produces that inherent divine capacity. And we're going to recognize this as something Master DK has, and which in our kinds of studies we are trying to develop in ourselves. It produces that inherent divine capacity which enables the detail of the sensed whole to be grasped with meticulous entirety. This wide yet detailed scope or universal recognition is extremely difficult for me to explain or for you to understand. The second ray has been called the ray of detailed knowledge, and where this term has been employed, the beginner has necessarily laid the emphasis upon the word detail. It might rather be called the ray of detailed unity, or the ray of the divine pattern, or of beauty in relationship. It involves, on the part of the disciple, a very high point of synthetic comprehension. So right there on page 393 in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, you see a paragraph which explains to you one of our major methods of study in relation to Master DK's ashram. Now, It can't hurt you. It can't hurt anybody. And even though you may ultimately belong to another ashram when the time is right, like KH or Master M or who knows, this kind of work is very good preparation. So I've been kind of going off here on a tangent, but there we are. In this list that we have looked at, he talks about the influence of Capricorn via Mercury and how we respond as individuals to the Capricorn influence most readily, because all kinds of advances into initiatory energies are occurring under Capricorn. Capricorn does rule specifically the first 5 initiations, and particularly it is associated with the third. He talks about the Shamballa influence and who receives that, and principally people who have a lot of the first ray, especially on the soul or monadic level, they will receive that. And he talks about the 2 lines of energy, 1357 and 246. They are principally ruling disciples and also nations, and you can tell where the preponderance may be. Sometimes it's going to be in a particular nation or individual, the hard line, and sometimes the soft line. Now we're getting the personal identity profile, the PIP, in its 3rd version, ready for conference. Again, we've hit a few walls on that, but it's all leading to a better development. And one of the graphs in there shows you whether, according to the questions you have answered, whether you have a preponderance of hardline or softline rays. And I think it's quite interesting, or a balance, a good balance, you know. It's interesting to assess yourself in that way. And then the 5th point here, the Shambhala nature will come in, particularly on 1357, and he tells us that the heart, as far as hierarchy goes, must dominate the solar plexus, and we're all aware of that. Even Alice Bailey was working on that particular connection between heart and the solar plexus. So, all right, underneath it all, this flow between energies of 1, 2, and 3 that we can say is related to the science of triangles. Now, let's go on a little bit more, and hopefully the occultism through which you have to wade will not become a deterrent to you, but in fact that your mind, your occult mind under Uranus and then Mercury, will expand in such a way that all of this detail will be synthesized into a unity, and we will begin to see life in a far more interrelated and unified manner, even though the detail will not escape us. See, it's one thing to have unintegrated detail. You have all this stuff, you know, what do you do with it? Can you put it together? And that's the question. With a serious study of occultism, you can begin to put all the detail together until it becomes true of the second ray for you, that it is the ray of the divine pattern, and eventually of beauty in relationship, which I think, you know, these are some wonderful, wonderful words and concepts. Okay, so number 6, and by the way, take notes of whatever you might like to discuss or question or state, you know. Take notes as you go along, because it's going to be hard to remember where you saw what you want to talk about. So, you know, if you can see the page number, like for instance, right now, we look like we're on page 451, and yeah, we are. Try to keep note of the page number if there's something specific you would like to discuss so we can find it more quickly. This will be one of the only programs in which the introduction is longer than the substance of the program. So the time has not yet come when it is safe for the aspirant or the disciple to relate the head center and the base of the spine. But as a matter of fact, think about that for a minute. The political workers have a certain triangle going for them. The heart center is often involved with these special service groups. It's the head center, the base of the spine, and the heart center. That's those who administer and work with the divine will. They have those three centers active. You just turn to Dyna 1 around page 40, 41 in there, and it shows you the 3 or 4 centers with which each seed group works. And maybe when you find the seed group with which you are most working, you will see why it is that certain centers in your makeup may be receiving more attention than others. So, but it's not safe yet to relate, for most of us, the head center and the base of the spine in response to a definite conscious appropriation of Shamballa force. And via the Antakarana, we can begin a little bit to appropriate this Shamballa force, but especially in group formation, as that becomes safer. As a matter of fact, there's certain approaches to hierarchy, or rather Shamballa, which only the hierarchy as a whole can make in terms of safety, even for the members of the hierarchy. Now, this is a point, whatever may take place automatically, normally, and naturally, and through the development of the disciple, natural development, can and should be permitted to take place, provided there is, now this is the discipline for us at this time, provided there is no conscious intent, to force the energies in a certain way, and that there is also a close and careful scrutiny and control of the personality life, because basically this is the beginning of activating a triangle within our system that eventually will be very strong, and it will be monad, triad, and soul-infused personality. This is just the beginning of it, and we have to watch how it goes, because overstimulation and an inappropriate use of energies is always possible. So, there are always people that want to force things, and they learn the hard way, and they may be set back for a number of lives while repair goes on in relation to what they have destroyed through injudicious action. We don't want to be among those people. We want to listen carefully to what the master says, because after all, he knows and we don't. So we follow instructions with occult obedience and not with an over-eagerness to make individual progress. It is a factor. And look, from the highest metaphysical point of view, you've been through all this forever. And every, how many universes are there? Well, you can't count. No one can count, because we have always more than you can specify. So nothing is new and everything is new. And you already are where you need to be on the highest levels of the universe, even right now, but the lower part has forgotten because of the projection in emanation which occurs. The lower part cannot contain our true identity on the highest levels possible. So we don't get inflated by that. We just know that we live a dual life. We are the specific, and we are the one. We are one of the many, and we are the one. Okay, so we proceed cautiously, and of course the heart center will probably be involved to a certain extent in these people who are dealing with the divine will. Here's something to bear in mind. The head center rules purpose. The base of the spine center rules will. And, sometimes in your horoscope, when you have a relationship going between Uranus and Pluto, we're dealing with those two factors, because eventually the highest head center is going to be ruled by Uranus, and the base of the spine has a lot to do with Pluto. So sometimes the horoscope can give you a hint as to the process. Oftentimes the triangular process through which you are passing in this life. Eventually all of us, if we want to take the third initiation and become healers of some kind, we have to have an activation of the triangle of the head center, the ajna center, and the alta major center, and a circulation going between those centers. And then we will have, in terms of healing, what is called the dispelling radiance. The dispelling radiance. A radiance so strong that it casts out disease. And that's why he says, beyond the third initiation, people are rarely sick. Their health is under control because of the circulation in their etheric body. So that's something, to strive for, and it's something that will eventuate when the time is right. Okay, number 7. The awakening of the ajna center with consequent and subsequent conscious control of the throat center must inevitably take place provided the disciple fulfills 2 conditions. Now, look, sometimes humanity is considered in a broad and general sense to be the throat center of Sanat Kumara or of the planetary logos, but sometimes also the ajna center, the directing center. And as humanity becomes more and more the world disciple, and before long now, it might be considered the world first degree initiate, the ajna center will come into effect. And basically, what we have in those 2 centers, ajna and throat, we have kind of a buddhi-manas operating. The ajna center can be connected with the personality, and often is, when you have an integrated personality that does whatever it wants, in the world, without necessarily being spiritual. But the ajna center is also connected with the spiritual triad. And the throat center is ruled sequentially by first the Earth, then Saturn, and then at a certain point by the 7th ray, probably implicating Uranus. Okay, so when these 2 come together, and it's a bit like a conjunction in your chart of Venus and Mercury, which is often found in creative people, okay, he can then become consciously, safely, and correctly creative. It's possible also to create unconsciously, unsafely, and incorrectly. We're always creating something, by our thoughts or by our words or whatever. So we need to have a lot of control over our creative process. Now, okay, what are the 2 conditions that are necessary for the awakening of the ajna center with the consequent and subsequent control of the throat center? And this is very necessary in the life of the disciple. Number 1, number A, a conscious orientation towards the soul and towards hierarchy. If we are really oriented towards the soul, we will be oriented towards hierarchy. You can almost see a triangle there between hierarchy, the soul, and the personality of the individual. And you can understand what occupies the first, second, and third rate positions. Here is another requirement. DK comes up with so many requirements. You wonder how you can possibly fulfill all of that, but okay. We just keep reading, thinking, applying, meditating, and before we know it, we will have fulfilled quite a bit, okay? So ask yourself, do I have a conscious orientation towards the soul, meaning, of course, not only your own causal body, but the solar angel within that, towards the soul and towards hierarchy. What is that my orientation? And probably for many it is the orientation, but of course in these days a dual orientation is required, producing another triangle, namely the disciple, humanity, hierarchy. And the disciple is between these pairs of opposites and has to regulate the flow of energy such as he can receive between the hierarchy and humanity, and he is the adjudicator that brings back and forth, just the way the Christ stands in an interesting triangle. I may mention a lot of triangles, okay, as they may occur to me, but here is a triangle that is especially found in the Festival of Goodwill, the Festival of the Christ, the Asala Festival, the Festival of Humanity. These are all kind of synonyms for the same festival that we find in June: the Christ, humanity, and hierarchy, or the Christ, humanity, and Shamballa. Now, think about that, because the Christ represents the entire hierarchy, being the head of it, and he can importune the Father in heaven for a beneficial relationship with humanity, and humanity occupies the third aspect. So the Christ takes all of that aspiration from those within humanity who aspire, he puts it through himself, and he presents it to the Father in heaven. And that is another triangle, which is basically Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, a fundamental triangle. Okay, so if we want to awaken the ajna center and control the throat center, and it's so necessary, because you know how many of us are just saying whatever we say, and we create what's called the idle word, the selfish word, and the cruel, hateful word. Now, if you turn to page 473 in your Treatise on White Magic book, you're going to find, probably in rule, no, it's not a rule, it's advice. You're going to find in number 13 or number 14 the description of the kind of words we create. And one of the kind of words that don't do much harm if they're just okay, and not have any meanness in them, is the idle thought, which results in the idle word, but it doesn't really get you any place, you see. So when you control that throat center by the directing ajna center, then the choice of words, when you speak, your silences, they are regulated according to the need of the situation. So, there's a triangle of negative possibilities there. Idleness, selfishness, and cruelty. This is a real thing, and it can be regulated by having the right kind of vision through the ajna center. Okay, so what else do you need? A deep love for humanity, present and based on mental perception and intuitive understanding and not on emotional reaction. So the more we study the real nature of love, we realize that it is not particularly an emotion, and that whatever love we may feel in the astral body is ultimately kind of a reflection and even a distorted and biased reflection of the real thing that is perceived more in the realm of Venus, which is the realm of the manas, higher manas, and the buddhi. And again, it's Mercury and Venus together, or Jupiter and Venus together, or Neptune and Venus together. Buddhi-manas. So think about for just a moment, your love of humanity, because it's something that's always growing and something that we talk about maybe a lot. And is it really operative? I mean, do we have it? Do we have it? Or is it just, looking at the teaching and remembering what the teaching says and not really fulfilling what the teaching is? So when we love, whether an individual or a group or, a nation or humanity as a whole, is it with this mental perception and intuitive understanding? Is it so? Just think about it for a minute while I kind of highlight this, because this is another requirement, in order to bring about the control of our energy system in relation to the energies we have been studying. Not an emotional reaction. So, okay, if we want to have that connection between the throat center and the ajna center, this has to be present. Two requirements: orientation towards the soul and the hierarchy, and a deep love for humanity. These are integrative requirements, and when they are present, the possibility of integrating your energy system, integrating your personality with the soul, integrating your soul infused personality with the triad, and eventually with the spirit, all of this is possible. Number 8, where the above conditions are fulfilled, then the impact of the inflowing energies will produce the required stimulation and awakening. Otherwise, you can get energy all right, but it may awaken undesirable conditions because we may not be ready for the impact. Energy is fairly neutral, and its effect has so much to do with the quality of the form which the energy is impacting. So, we need to present a form which is prepared for these high energy impacts. Otherwise, the results will be separative and not integrative, and will not contribute to the unification of humanity, which is so sorely needed in this world condition where we are much influenced by Mars, and with its divisive and cutting and frictional and warlike tendencies. that has to go and Venus has to take over. As a matter of fact, if you look at your horoscope and you see the relationship between Venus and Mars and try to really understand that, it's not just about men and women, it's not just about human love and so forth. It's about the soul and the personality, because Mars does represent the entire personality as well as different aspects within it, and Venus represents the causal body, the beauty of the causal body, and the presence of the angel of the presence within the causal body. So the Venus-Mars connection is a very occult connection in your chart. And every once in a while, he gives us hints about the kind of things you should look for. Certain other fixed stars, you want to see where Alcyone is, where Sirius is, maybe some of the stars in the Great Bear and so forth. You want to see those things, and you want to know where your Venus is and what it's doing. And, the ray ruler, which is, suppose you have a second ray soul. Well, then you're going to look for what Jupiter is doing, and maybe Venus too, because they will bring through that ray energy. So there are certain occult ways to approach the astrological chart which are not the common ways at all. So many people are interested simply in personal astrology, and while we never discount any area of astrology, we have to realize that occult astrology is not common, and we need to understand how it works. Okay, he says, that is all I have to say. This is all I have to say about the response of the centers in the human being to the activity of the planetary centers under systemic and zodiacal stimulation, namely the planetary centers being at first Shamballa, hierarchy, and humanity, and they all respond to solar systemic and zodiacal stimulation. Later, he's going to, not much later either, pretty soon, and I don't think we'll get into it today because it's too deep and too unusual. He gives us a tabulation which has many different correlations than we may be used to. And he goes through also the different kinds of planetary centers subsidiary to Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. He goes through the different kingdoms, the animal, the vegetable, the deva kingdom, the mineral kingdom. He goes through all of that, and he assigns certain rays to it. So, we're going to put on our meticulous entirety hat and be ready to try to absorb that and the relations, because between all these kingdoms, there are triangles. And we have to, let's just put a general triangle between the kingdom of the soul, the kingdom of humanity, and any other of the lower kingdoms. There's going to be a triangle, because humanity is meant to bring soul energy to the lower kingdoms. So that will be interesting. I am not here, he says, writing a treatise on the individual training of the disciple. If you want that, you go to A Treatise on White Magic. And maybe I've told you before, but I've finished the video commentary on that entire book. So, although it's long, and there's, I don't know, a lot of programs. Almost 200 programs maybe. But you can get a lot out of it. That's the book to read for individual training. I am not here writing a treatise on the individual training of the disciple, but am attempting to demonstrate the fact of cosmic, zodiacal, although zodiacal is cosmic, systemic, planetary, and human interplay, which in its turn constitutes, and this is important, a great and living whole. We can divide things up for more precise study, but finally we have to put it all together again, because all of these different levels and layers constitute a great and living whole. And what we're trying to do is relate humanity, of which we are a part, to the planetary context, to the solar systemic context, to the zodiacal context, and that which is beyond, cosmic, the realm of the one about whom naught may be said, and so forth. So it's a great and living whole, the life expression of a being, capital B, of whom we only know that love and the will to good, expressed through the universal mind, are the outstanding characteristics, and that these are steadily emerging into increasing radiance. So, how much do we know about this one about whom naught may be said? Well, we don't know much. Otherwise, we could say something, but we don't. We don't know. So, here is the picture of it, and we're working upon the cosmic planes in what he has just told us. The universal mind has its origin, as far as we're concerned, on the cosmic mental plane. Cosmic buddhi is the origin of what we call love, and it works through the cosmic astral plane and makes its way into our system. And cosmic will from the cosmic atmic plane. Now, those are just words for us when we can't even understand spiritual will from our own atmic plane and our own buddhi plane. We haven't built this antikarana, and greater antikaranas are necessary for the very high initiate who is going on his journey on the way of higher evolution, and maybe will discover some of these sources. But if we think that these are the only sources of those great energies, we are mistaken, because from a certain point of view, this whole thing is just an etheric physical plane, and there are 6 supercosmic planes above it, and on and on and on until we reach the 10th dimension of cosmos, whatever that is. And so we have a lot of journeying to do. We have a huge opportunity in front of us if we just get out of the kindergarten of identifying with material perceptions, which identification we call materialism, and begin to venture in group form into the deeper and higher cosmos, as we have done cyclically forever. Okay, so that'll be enough on that. And, I never know what I'm going to say, and I should know, but I don't. And this is for our next meeting, which is a real plunge into occultism, because it'll deal with the triangles and the centers. And this is the end of reading number 31. Michael, keep me honest here if I don't know. 451 to not much at all. 1 page. Wow, that's a record. 451 to 452. And we're on the 22nd of February. And we will be beginning not on the 29th, but probably on the 27th. I'll look over here. Yeah, it'll be on the 27th of February in the evening, and it'll be from 452 onward. Maybe 1 page, maybe 2 pages, it's a deep, deep study, And what we're doing, we're not studying in a linear fashion, which must be obvious to everybody. We are studying in a associative fashion. And I sometimes call these things spherical studies, where, you start someplace and you could always end up on the sphere and you don't know where it's going to be, but whatever you do, whatever you touch, it is inclusive. And everything is related to everything else. And when we begin to develop that kind of mind, which detects relationship, it is a quality of mind, and sometimes the fifth ray can be a little bit cut and dried, so we need that fourth ray in there on the mental level. When we develop that mind of relationship, we are entering what is called pure reason, the Buddhic plane, and I would say it has a lot to do with the fifth sublevel of the Buddhic plane. It's just on the doorstep to true intuition, and it's the fifth sublevel of the fourth plane. And that will bring a union of the fourth ray and the fifth ray, and we will see in very reasonable relationship all things that pertain, to our planet under the realm of all knowledge. All knowledge finally occurs for us, and obviously it's not all knowledge, okay, but, within a very vast scope. It is found on the third subplane of the third plane. And when we have developed the pure reason of the Buddhic plane, thinking associatively and in a unified manner, we're on our way to this all knowledge of the atmic plane. Okay. Now, if you've been taking notes or have questions about this and that, okay, we have some different things going on here, and Michael, what should I be looking at here? Okay.
There have been sound issues, and Carrie is reminding us that next week, Wednesday, is an evening schedule.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Evening schedule for this one, and a morning schedule for the normal ask.
So in the violet purple, instead of 27 February 19 morning schedule, that would be evening schedule.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, let's see where I am here. Yeah, because I had left this, and this is for this program. Yeah, that's correct, Carrie. Evening schedule. Thanks for the catch. Good. Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. This program, evening. Now, look, when I go to the United States in a month, I cannot tell exactly what will be possible, but I'll try to keep you informed. And when I'm traveling, I obviously can't do everything I'd like to do exactly on time, but I'll keep you as informed as possible. But that we're still a little away from that. Tomorrow, we have our usual Ask programming on the Soul of Nations, and it's an evening schedule, and then we have the Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes on Sunday evening schedule. Okay, so good. Now let's see, what else?
Catherine asked, you mentioned cosmic and systemic. Could you please expand on the difference between zodiacal signs and constellations? Do the signs relate to systemic and constellations to cosmic?
Yes. The cosmic part are the constellations themselves as great stellar centers of outgoing energy. The Davic receivers within our solar system and associated like says Alan Leo anyway, like the sections of an orange, with each planet, each area is filled with Davic receivers, are the signs, and they are attuned to the constellational outgoing energies which are cosmic. The signs are intra-systemic, and the constellations themselves are extra, outside the solar system, and are cosmic in nature. The constellations actually constitute a very high chakra in this great deity that we call the one about whom not may be said. And I've oftentimes offered a picture of that, or at least what I estimate it to be. That little green triangle is our local cosmic God, so to speak, our super cosmic logos. And within its, because you can't say him or her, you just can't, within its head center is this center within the head that comprised of the entire zodiac of constellations. And those are the sources of the energy, and the signs are within the solar system. Probably our solar logos has its own 12-fold series of Davic receivers, and every planet does too. So signs within the solar system associated with the planets and with our particular star, and then outside our solar system and on a very high level is the entire zodiac of constellations. I hope I'm being clear. It's as much as, these are, of course, words. What can we really, what can we really know about the one about whom naught may be said? Think of it. The 7 solar systems, of which ours is one, as a heart center, is a huge being. And it's sort of our local cosmic logos in which our whole solar system is playing its part. And yet that thing, whatever it is, go to page 293 of Cosmic Fire, you'll see all that there in a tabulation. That greater system is just a chakra in the one about whom not may be said, which is a chakra within a sub-parabrahmic logos, all of these 7. And the sub-parabrahmic logos are chakras within a being we call a cosmic parabrahm. It's not parabrahman in the sense of the absolute. It's just a name given to it to indicate a still greater being. And we're nowhere near the size or scope of a galaxy when we are dealing with this. Nowhere near it. So we have a big adventure ahead of us, and the way of higher evolution is the beginning of that great adventure. Meanwhile, we're on the path towards that type of initiation which frees us as a monad to travel on those paths to the distant constellations and eventually know what is the nature of a galaxy, which is just a little nothing compared to greater structures and so forth. So it's an amazing universe, and there are an infinitude of them, apparently sequential, according to Madame Blavatsky. Right. Okay, so now, thank you. And the sound issue, I hope, Anne Veronica had problem. Okay. But everything else seems to be checking out. Okay, good.
And Vera has her hand raised.
Okay, let's take a look there. And I can come down to, okay, Vera. Go ahead, Vera.
I would like to know if all cities, even small ones, have soul or personality, cities, places, and what determine, and if that is so, what determines the race?
I would say the answer is yes, and especially what we've been given is the more significant cities. Now, for instance, if I was to go, okay, it's just finding my way, right? If I'm to go over here, I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I'm looking for here it is. Okay, there it is. Let's just say this, okay? I'll do this. So I'm just looking up Berlin, just for the heck of it, okay? There's an example of the capital city and the ruler. Paris is ruled by Virgo and Capricorn, Berlin by Scorpio and Leo, and so forth. And you can see a lot of connections in this. Now, in a less formulated way, every city has its character. But the Tibetan doesn't go into the minor centers, because it's just an analogy, isn't it, Vera? You have the major centers, the minor centers, and the minute centers. And the Tibetan just doesn't go beyond the major centers. And now the whole world, in terms of countries, has proliferated so greatly that maybe when he writes again, he'll talk about some of these new nations and which signs and which rays rule them. Now, he does actually do quite a bit with various countries, but he only gives you the astrology and not the rays. You've seen that, like you've seen that. If I was to, but just for everybody's benefit, I'll look up Finland, or something, and because I can rely upon that. And notice how many things in the last column, not given, not given, not given. The zodiacal rulers are given, but not the rays. And for the major countries, or the bigger countries, I don't know what he considers major, the rays are given as well. So, like China has a first-rate soul and a third-rate personality. We see it here. Now, what determines all this? He says, look, it's not just, he says it's a very, very deep thing. It's been a while since I've read The Destiny of the Nations, but he seems to say that there's something talismanic or magnetic that has drawn certain types to certain locations. These are deeply esoteric factors that are determining which zodiacal signs a particular area is responsive to. It's not, it's not necessarily because, they got together on July 1st, so it's ruled by Cancer. Or take a look at the United States. July 4th is our Independence Day. It's a big day, and Cancer does have something to do with the United States. But what signs does he give us? Not that at all. He gives us Aquarius and Gemini, and nothing brought together simply because of a starting date. So it's a much deeper issue. Now, it's been probably 10 years or maybe 15, I don't know. It's been a long time since I've read in that section. But if you read through The Destiny of the Nations, you will see about the occult factors that draw people of certain types together into certain locations. And they're not what we think. And it doesn't go beyond that. He doesn't really, like if I wanted to spend an hour right now I could probably find that in the Destiny of the Nations. But I don't have that time, and if you want to do a little research there about why it is that certain cities and countries are ruled by certain rays, he tells us it's very esoteric. And maybe, how talismans are planted in certain places and they have a certain quality. There are talismans all over the planet, and they are magnetic, and they draw people together of a certain quality. I guess that's all I can say, because he himself doesn't say much except to talk about it's not the superficial astrology that we might ordinarily look at when saying who lives where. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
bet. You bet. Okay, I find the most interesting subject, and I think, I'd like to find that, but I don't have time right now to go looking. It's not a big book, so just read it again, no problem. Okay. Okay, other questions or thoughts that you may have? Anything further? I mean, we have dealt, it's only been a page, really, and we've completed that list about control of the centers and the reception of certain centers through certain centers of certain energies. We've looked at that just a little bit, but it is a deep subject. Now, when does this head center and base of the spine center relationship really begin? Not that it should be forced, because you need the supervision of someone who can really see and know. But by the time the third initiation is taken, that relationship, which will be culminated at the fifth initiation, already has a beginning. So before the third initiation of ourselves or of our planet, it's just, you just can't do it. If there is some kind of connection that occurs, okay, but if you force it, you are in trouble. And think of it. What is the initiatory degree of our planetary logos? And, since we're set up this way, I'm just going to answer that. Our planetary logos is a first degree cosmic initiate. And it won't be until, in my estimation, until the judgment day that the planetary logos becomes a second degree cosmic initiate. Now, the base of the spine center is occultly inactive in our planetary logos. So that, and that's, he's a first degree initiate in the cosmic sense, in a masculine incarnation, just like Venus is in a feminine incarnation at this time. So a first degree initiate is not a third degree initiate. And when we think that the base of the spine center within our planetary scheme, or maybe globe, I don't know how we differentiate, is not active now, it's because of the relatively low initiatory status of our planetary logos. Now, we're going to move on, and in this solar system, our planetary logos will achieve, must achieve, the third initiation and even the fourth, if our solar logos is going to make the kind of progress that it has to make. And I've explained that before. Our planetary logos and planet is the base of the spine center of our solar god, our solar logos. Well, our solar logos is trying to become a master solar logos in this solar system. Is Sirius already that, or is Sirius the third degree? Anyway, in our solar system, the attempt is being made for our planetary logos to be a cosmic master of the fifth degree, and he can't do it unless our planet, as the base of the spine center, is ready to assist as all base of the spine centers do between the third, fourth, and fifth initiation, or at the third, fourth, and fifth initiation. So I'm using the law of analogy in relation to what happens in our own energy system and applying that to our solar logos. And what this means is that if all goes really, really well, in the next solar system, our solar logos can begin to work on his sixth cosmic initiation. But if it doesn't go so well, then in this solar system, our solar logos will pass through the cosmic crucifixion initiation, and in the next solar system, the fifth or mastership initiation will be offered. You know how it is with us. We either make the grade or we don't make the grade. And there's a potential. Okay, if you struggled hard, you could take whatever, the second initiation. Oh, you didn't make it. Now we'll have to wait for your next incarnation to do that. See, it's the same with these great logoi, and somewhere, DK talks about what lies ahead for our solar logos. And our planets will accompany our solar logos into manifestation in the next solar system. Where will we as emanations be? Not necessarily here. There's all kinds of opportunities depending on the path of higher evolution. Now, I know a lot of this stuff, hey, this is way out there, this is really cosmic, but when we get a really good idea of the cosmic picture, we can analogize to the local picture and vice versa. When we get the details of the local picture, we can analogize to the cosmic picture. It's not always a perfect one-to-one relationship, but important hints can be seen if we study both and their similarities, analogically speaking. Okay, anything else?
Joe asks, you mentioned the fifth level of the Buddhic plane. Can you talk more about the other levels? Are there 7 levels?
Yes, there are, and 2 of them are out of sight. Here is a compendium that Keith Bailey made from AUM. These are called AUM charts, and he's done some composite work. And here are what we're given, because around 188 of Cosmic Fire, we see the different abilities. And when we actually the faculty was just studying some of this stuff on each one of these sub-levels of the Buddhic plane. See, maybe we know somewhat what spiritual discernment is, like we can always detect the spiritual factor behind the obvious. In response to group vibration on the mental plane, we begin to have the group life as our center, and we are more a group member than we are an individual. And spiritual telepathy, we begin to receive mentally the impress of the divine plan. Those are on the mental plane, but then we get to 5 subsidiary qualities or capabilities on the Buddhic plane and 5 on the Atmic plane. And sometimes we could go through these in detail, but let's just say that the 7th plane is always relating to hearing, the 6th subplane to touch, the 5th subplane to vision, the 4th subplane to taste, and the 3rd subplane to the sense of smell. And these, what are given here as higher Buddhic faculties, are the higher correspondences of the senses found down here. So, what are the 4 sounds? Let's see, I'd have to make this bigger if I could. There are 4 gates to Shamballa, what does it say on the buddhic plane? A man, something, to find the note of his planetary logos. That's interesting. So maybe there's something there about hearing one of the four sounds that involves Shamballa, but it is an intuitive registration. It begins to be not strictly mental, it begins to dawn, and there's a sensitivity involved with the buddhic plane which is not yet found on the mental plane. So I need to do a little more research on this. I think we all do. The healing touch, of course, is obvious, and a lot of healers, if they are successful, they'll be working with a Buddhic input. When it comes to divine vision, see, look, and there's planets connected with all of this as well. I can make planetary associations. For instance, with healing, Neptune will be very important for that sense of touch. When it comes to divine vision, Venus and Jupiter will be very important, and there will be a kind of it goes beyond the strictly mental apprehension. It is an insight into how things are put together, but pure reason is involved, and that is the fifth sub-level. So it's a kind of a buddhi-manas location, kind of a buddhi-manas expression. None of us has divine vision yet. The lower correspondence is the higher clairaudience. But we can reason our way into the comprehension of the structure of our solar system and our local cosmos. Reason plays its role. Then comes the moment of intuition on the fourth sub-level of the, let's see, where am I here? Fourth sub-level of the Buddhic plane, and that's the 4 of 4. It's the middlemost position. It is the intuitive position, where we just have what Master Moria calls straight knowledge. Then comes idealism, not the emotional idealism of the astral plane, but something that really begins to connect us with the monad and with the realm of formative ideas. Now, this is what a master has. A master has mastered, or is at least working on the fifth from below. So the initiation is number 5, and you count up the subplanes, and you will see idealism of a higher type there, putting him in touch with the world of ideas in an intuitive sense. And beyond that, nothing is given because it pertains to Chohans of the 6th and 7th degree. This is what I'm doing right now is very superficial, but it gives you the idea that when Christ gave the Sermon on the Mount, it was coming from the atmic plane, and not just the planetary logos, but the note of the solar logos begins to sound. And it's so interesting that when you go to plane number 7, it's always hearing of some kind that is involved. So we might be, planetarily sensitive to hearing down here on the Buddhic plane, but when it comes to the atmic plane, it is a higher type of logos that is involved. This is realized through the not-self. All right, it's just, really deep. When it comes to active service, that is a broader type of planetary healing. The summation of the work of the self for the not-self. And the whole not-self is the planetary structure, which in itself needs to be corrected and can be through active service. When I think about Master DK and his possible atmic connection, and the fact that he's a great healer and will be teaching that, and he is a master, so the number 5 is connected with the atmic plane because it's the 5th plane from below. I think that active service is very much a part of his work. Then comes something which is the higher correspondence of divine vision, and it is realization. And it says here, recognition of the triplicity needed in manifestation, or the reflex action of the self and the not self. So obviously we have to ponder on what that means, but realization is a tremendously impressive realization or recognition of the light of reality as seen from the perspective of the divine will. Obviously we could pause a long time on all of these to meditate and think about what they are. I venture to say that when we say, I realize this, I realize that, it's not the realization that a master will have on the atmic plane. When it comes to perfection, see, and this continues, hearing, touch, sight, taste, smell, okay? Perfection is the fourth sublevel, and the fourth ray is involved. And when it comes to the number 4, it's called the corrector of the form. So there is a change in the form which attunes it to the higher archetype. And, what does this really mean? Perfection in terms of what? Within the Brahmic life, does it mean finally that people who work on that level can help the lower worlds become perfectly attuned to the higher archetypes? Maybe it means that. The last quality or energy we are given is all knowledge, and this involves a tremendous knowledge of cycles and times. The principle of manas in its discriminating activity, perfecting the interrelation between the self and not self. Well, we'd have to ponder on that. Perfecting, through all knowledge, the interrelation between the self and the not self. When do the masters act? They act at just the right time. They act according to their knowledge of cycles, and they execute the divine plan in time according to their knowledge of the energies available at any period. And all knowledge gives us that kind of insight into the times, seasons, and cycles, so we know how to manifest the purpose of God. And the purpose is found on a still higher level. And once again, only Chohans of the 6th and 7th degree can comprehend what is here, so he hasn't even bothered. And notice the whole chart just stops. He does not tell us what we can encounter on the 7 subplanes of the monadic and logoic levels. And yet that we will encounter something. I mean, that's obvious because here we go. I'll come to it. Yes, every one of these subplanes, especially the higher 4 and the higher 4, has its chakras. What DK tells us is that 35 vortices of fire make a master. If that is so, then 42 vortices of fire make a Chohan, and 49 vortices of fire make a Chohan of the 7th degree, such as the Christ is becoming. And all of these vortexes down here, they all depend upon the downflow from the highest vortex on the logoic plane. So that's just a very brief, Joe, summary of some of these qualities, any one of which we could profit by spending an hour on it, for sure. Okay, anything else there, Michael, that I'm missing? Is everything okay? Is everybody okay?
Carrie writes, please return to the complete Keith Bailey chart so I can take a screenshot.
Okay, right. And basically, it's a compendium of things that you said around 188 in Cosmic Fire. Yeah, so this is good. And I've talked to Keith about this, and as long as people use it for good purpose, then he's okay with it. Most of these charts are straight from DK, but in this case, he's put a lot of things together, also from DK, of course, but, there they are all under the eye at the same time. Okay, do you have your screenshot, Carrie? Is it okay? Have you managed?
And Joe says, wow, thank you. And I would add that in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, DK begins talking about the five senses on page 164.
So it's actually an extensive
A very extensive
section.
write-up. Yes.
Very extensive section. So, yeah, I mean, and there's so much to study. Like I say, I have worked sort of meticulously at all of this in a written form, and you can get it on Makara, where I'm obviously going to say things in a more careful manner. So if you want to get into that, but here is the summary of these planes. You see, this is the summary of it, and he probably leads up to that and he explains each one of the senses, but we can see how far he goes. He goes as far as all knowledge, and it's just been laid out, on the planes and subplanes. And basically, these are the higher psychic faculties. These are the higher psychic faculties. And we're not so interested in having those psychic faculties that we had in Atlantis and which animals have at the moment. Some animals, those are interesting things and they can be regained and used once the higher psychic faculties are part of our equipment. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what happened to Tuya here. I hope I sent the right. I'll hear about it. I hope I sent the right link. Yeah.
Tuya has not been logged into the webinar, but Frederick writes, gratitude for this teaching and inspiration.
Okay, well, thank you, Frederick, and thank you, everybody. So, okay, now we've done enough on this now, and time is running. So let's just have a little triangles meditation, very, very brief, okay, very brief, because just because. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to, there it is. So I'm not going to go through all that's in here because we do that on the Wednesday triangles work, okay, and but anyway, that this triangle with the master and the solar angel and the apex at the top of the head and the flowing down of this golden orange light and bathing in that light as if we were to bathe in the waters of the sea, let us think in those terms. So this is a key triangle to start the day with. And then because somehow the quality of the higher energies flows into all aspects of our etheric and personal system. And we'll think of our own little network, whether it's one triangle or 50, whatever. Think of our own little network, and there's no time right now to visualize every person, but think of them in general, with light and love flowing between the participants. And the idea here is to relate all this to the Buddhas of activity in Shamballa, and the triple interrelation is, as you see, our own network, the global network, and the three Buddhas, and I wouldn't be surprised that we would find somehow Sanat Kumara at the center of that highest triangle of the Buddhas. So it's a lot like bringing heaven to earth. And this will be intensifying, and it is a work that simply must go on. And we think about this interrelation before us, from our own local work to the planetary work sponsored by humanity, and then finally to the shambolic triangular work, because these Buddhas, they do represent the third aspect of divinity, and the triangle is the symbol there for the third plane, the atmic plane, and in general for the third ray. And together, let us visualize that whole flow going on our planet as we sound the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, I just want to say, that I've been working on the externalization of the hierarchy, and he goes into the three great invocations in great detail. And you would be, I was anyway, amazed at the power of these first two great invocations when they emerged and how they can continue to be used. So, I guess, what have I done? About 27 programs so far, maybe about, 50, maybe about 50 1-hour segments, something like that, 40 something. But you may find it useful or conducive to review those things. And I'm not sure right now whether we have for each program the page numbers covered, but we will. All the three great invocations are of great value. And as he said, even though at one point the first great invocation emphasizing goodwill was temporarily suspended, it will be revived again. It was suspended, and this incredible first ray invocation about the Lords of Liberation issuing forth. And we need them again right now, no question about it. So, if you want to serve, and we all do, there's no end to what we might be able to do constructively on the behalf of Master DK's indications, and also on behalf of the larger picture and on behalf of humanity. We'll find a place within the esoteric realm of service to offer such service in addition to whatever we may be doing in a more outer sense. So then really, I think I'll go no further right now. I'll just say tonight at 6 o'clock, we have, we have the dissipation of glamour work. And you should, that's just the normal link that you've been using for that work. And then whatever link you used this time, you don't have to use it again. When Wednesday comes, you can go back to the webinar link that you have been using. And I'll do my very best to show up, Thank you for your attendance. And there's a lot to meditate about. There's a lot to learn. And there's a lot to do. So let's take it as seriously as we ever have during our years of involvement with the teaching, because now is the time that we have to show that we actually have learned something. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be seeing you later. Some of you, all of you, whomever, and I'll be happy to work with you later in our evening here in Europe. It'll be 6 p.m. GMT. We'll see you now. All the best, and bye-bye.